to speak about in 10 minutes, so I'll try and just outline some of the major points. Just a few days ago, as we had celebrated Eid, in Pakistan, a Ahmadi mosque was torched and 6 young Ahmadi men were shot at. Concurrently, in India, in Jharkhand, in a village, many Muslims were attacked because they were trying to slaughter goats as qurbani, sacrifice at the occasion of Eid al-Adha. And similarly in the region, whether it's Bangladesh or in Myanmar, we see a most toxic and a worrying trend across these countries where extremist ideologies that believe in particular narratives and particular, sense of supremacy over minority groups are not just propagating that particular agenda, but are also using violence as a means to impose that. Whether it's the Hindutva in India or the Lashkars and Jaishes and Taliban in Pakistan and Afghanistan, or the Buddhist monks, some of which have turned into extremists in Sri Lanka and Myanmar. So we see this rise of a very, very disturbing religious brand of nationalism that considers anyone outside the majoritarian fold as not just an outsider, as a traitor, as a unpatriotic person, but also somebody who can be legitimately killed. So you mentioned in your remarks, Masood Saab, about the Ahmadi community in Pakistan, about the Shia minority within Pakistan, and they have been facing the brunt of such hatred. And that is one of the biggest challenges we have, that we have hate speech across Pakistan, which emanates not just in the popular media narratives, but also in many mosques, in many so-called scholars who claim that they know religion. They do it even on TV. So there's a very famous TV personality who has been targeting these minorities, in his talk shows. I mean, there was one other TV anchor who was doing a morning show, and she actually converted a Hindu young man. I mean, she staged the entire drama to gain some kind of rating or approval or acceptability. And that is something which is so worrying, because Pakistan, when Pakistan came into being, the minorities were nearly 20% of the total population. And that is why Mr. Jinnah on 11th of August made a very clear statement as the head of the state, as the first Governor General of Pakistan. His 11th August speech said that, you are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques. With time, you will cease to be religious subjects of the state, because you will have equality as Pakistani citizens. Sadly, this speech was ignored for many, many decades. In fact, it was censored even at that time. It was kept out of textbooks, it was kept out of official documents and declarations, and only in the last 10-20 years this revival has taken place. So while we face all of these hurdles in Pakistan, there are many positive things happening at the same time. I think there is a larger consensus within Pakistani society, within the politicians, that something has to be done about extremism. And at the same time, there have been legislation in the last tenure of Nawaz Sharif in favor of the Hindus, in favor of the Sikhs, in favor of the Christians. And similarly, the Pakistani army has also been fighting the Taliban both within Pakistan and on the borderlands. So I guess it's a country in tumult and transition. So I'm optimistic that it will find its path. But I guess for that to happen, more and more Pakistanis will have to speak up, will have to support such culture of tolerance and inclusion and pluralism. Because, this is something that we are facing as citizens of the world everywhere. It's not just about South Asia. Even in the United States, we are living in a most extremist moment where, white nationalism and Christian supremacist arguments are being supported not just by some fanatics, but even at the highest levels of the government. and that is something that needs to be countered. At the same time, we have the rise of right in Europe, which uses the same instrument, against immigrants, against people of color, against so-called quote-unquote outsiders, and they want to exclude these people from those societies, from the economies, from the larger remit of a functional society. And I think that's something that we really have to be cognizant of, because extremism anywhere is a threat to human beings and to a peaceful and just world. And I think that is what we need to remember. I think the problems between India and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, they're also rooted in our colonial experience. I mean, for the British, set up a system of administration, of laws, of society that created communal identities. The idea of Hindu and Muslim identity first came about in the middle of 19th century when the British first launched a census. Before that, the idea of a Hindu did not formally exist because it is so diverse, it is so plural. In every state, in every region, there are different worshipping deities, there are different kind of rituals which are followed. And it is with this growth in the colonial identity of who's a Hindu, who's a Muslim, its natural outcome was this division in 1947 when these identities became political and became a source of competition over economic and political resources and power. And unfortunately, we have not decolonized ourselves. While we have a separate, independent countries now, India and Pakistan and now Bangladesh, we live very much in the colonial frameworks. We have the colonial civil service, we have the colonial police. I mean, you'll be surprised that the police order in India, Pakistan and Bangladesh is the same that was introduced by the British in 1861. 1861, I mean, it is almost more than 1.5 centuries ago, and it had a different purpose. And all of these issues related to how the state policies are shaped, how people are treated, are linked to that particular colonial experience that we still have to get rid of and decolonize our minds, our systems, our societies, and perhaps that is the way forward for a more peaceful region, and not just the region but also the world. So I guess I've already taken more time than was given to me. But once again, many thanks, Masood Saab. I'm most grateful and honored.